Hi, I'm Chris Glover, the NDP critic for technology and innovation. Welcome to Tech Talks. Welcome back to Tech Talks. I'm Chris Glover, the MPP for Spadina Fort York. Today we are interviewing Patrick Connolly and Don Walker from Hypha Worker Co-op. So Patrick and Don, thank you so much for being here. And your company's called the Hypha Worker Co-op. What is a worker co-op? Why don't we start there?
Worker co-ops are businesses that are democratically managed and collectively owned by everyone who works there. Um, Co-ops tend to have closer ties to communities. They are democratically run, so workers have often better working conditions, have a say in setting hours and thinking about things like living wage.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what are the advantages, like from a business perspective and from a worker perspective, of a co-op versus a regular business? Because there are thousands, like I know you're a technology company, there are thousands of tech, startups and accelerators in the province. What's the advantage of being a worker co-op?
Um, I maybe I can speak from our case specifically.
Sure.
I think we had all worked together previously on tech projects, mostly in volunteer and community settings, and it was really important for us to find ways to work on tech projects where we could keep close values and thinking about the mission that's sort of driving us and making sure we're finding like-minded people to work with. So an organization like a cooperative, which has that focus on workplace democracy, allows everyone who's a member to also have a say in how the company is run. I think was a and I for us seemed like a structure that would ensure that we would kind of keep close our values and be able to find other like-minded people to work with. And then sort of as I said at the beginning, I think we found it as a good way to understand like how collectively we want what conditions we want to work in and how to get there. And so that is sort of setting things like what policies we think are important about wages, thinking about are there types of companies we don't want to work with,
Yeah,
et
that's
cetera.
actually, it's on your website, and it's part of your mission statement that you want to work with mission-oriented organizations. So how do you define that? What is a mission-oriented organization? Patrick, do you want to try this one?
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like it's part of it is just kind of being a little bit vocal about what our values are and who we're working with, and it's starting to get to the point where people are finding us, um, and uh, yeah, I think we all come from grassroots movements, so we tend to recognize folks who are interested in kind of pushing back on the same institutions that we are, and kind of creating space for community and grassroots work and working in certain sorts of ways. And yeah, distributing power in certain sorts of ways that I think we try to internalize that different sort of distribution of power
Give me some
inside ourselves.
specifics. What is pushing back, look like, and what kind of organizations or structures would you be pushing back on?
Yeah. I think this is a little bit outside the script of how we were prepared, so I don't want to go too
Okay.
far into it. But I would say those who are looking to work with kind of open source software and kind of build in a way uh, where we have a government clients and build in a way that other citizens can come in and participate and kind of intervene in the systems and improve on them after we leave, and introducing those ways of working that are quite uncommon in with some partners,
So
government and
is Linux a
nonprofit.
big part of what you do and what you work with? Do you do a lot of work with Linux?
I would say it's a little kind of off to the side. It's not central to how, but we do work with it. Yes.
Mhm. Okay, so it's not necessarily software. The mission isn't necessarily software based, like open source, but you talked about open source software.
Yes, yeah, it's more the values, the working, collaborative work, and open and
So,
invitational environment of those of that is baked into those pieces of
okay.
software.
And so you're talking about, the values and finding mission-oriented organizations to work with. So are these like environmental organizations? Are they, do they have certain workplace standards? Is it, corporate social responsibility? What kinds of things would you look for in a group or a company that you'd be working with? Don, do you want to try this one?
Sure. Yeah. So I think it's sort of a range of stuff. We've had kind of early conversations if we want to formalize sort of these assessment criteria. Right now, when it comes up, we sort of have an internal discussion and we operate. with one person, one vote as other cooperatives do, but also kind of we aim for consensus because we're small, there's 7 of us. So
Mhm.
often it's sort of by agreement that we would proceed, but with working with a new organization, and they tend to be nonprofit. They tend to also have like a social mission defined. They're very clear about kind of what ends they're seeking or goals that they're trying to pursue in their work. We've also worked with traditional startups and, as Patrick mentioned, government. And in those cases, I think it's sort of understanding the specific project they're working on, seeing if our way of working can really help add something. And part of our mission is to sort of think about how to redesign relationships with technology. So especially if like we have ways of working that we think are beneficial to those groups, I think that's another key factor in making a decision.
So you've been talking about, the companies that you work with. You've talked a little bit about how you work. So what does it mean to be a member of a worker co-op? Like if I was a young tech person, with talent in Toronto, why would I want to work with Hypha or a worker co-op rather than a regular startup or a regular accelerator?
We can look around the world and see that democracy is kind of struggling in certain ways in the high towers, at the national level, even the provincial level. It's kind of like buckling a little bit under certain sorts of weight. We're lucky it hasn't hit Canada yet. But the idea that we're seeing that pain, and maybe there's a way to like bring democracy down to a smaller level and run experiments in democracy at a kind of a place where we can actually touch and intervene in and develop intuitions and skills and expertise about what democracy means at a smaller level. And that's sometimes is quite exciting to people to think about playing with those ideas in a space that feels accessible. That is,
Well, so the advantage is that you're actually working in a democratically run organization and that the 7 of you have an equal say. Is this accurate? Like you have an equal say and an equal vote in the decisions that are made?
And it can mean many different things for the different sorts of people who start them. That there's not one monolithic democracy in cooperatives. They're all kind of finding the right flavor of it that works for them.
Right. The other question that I'm asking everybody is, what is the role of government in nurturing our tech ecosystem in Ontario?
In some ways, Toronto is already like a tech hub, and the government is already supporting a certain form of stuff developing. And it's really the question is which form do we want to create, and how do we create the one that I think does prevent too many hierarchies or builds democracy or kind of helps us build a more just society.
We often look to them as if they're kind of ideals, but they're accelerating in some metrics of success, like its profitability. But there's actually like rising income inequality, unaffordable housing, lack of social programs. Like there's a lot of lip service paid to fixing the world's problem, but in their own backyards, like things are burning and neighbors are struggling. And so perhaps there's like room to rethink what it means to be a tech hub, and do we want to model ourselves off of the same paths that others have gone through. And we feel like worker cooperatives and cooperatives generally are a way to kind of try something new and not just follow the path that others have gone down.
The internet was created by the American military because they didn't want all the data stored in one big computer that could be hit with a missile and everything's destroyed. They wanted it, they created the internet so that everything's stored in multiple sites. And it seems like a co-op is actually breaking these into multiple sites. Like is there a reflection in cooperatives, or does the structure of the internet actually lend itself toward cooperative modeling? Do you think that's a potential?
I feel like you're maybe hitting on an area core to our co-op. I mean, a lot of us have come together because we're interested in looking at, ways that people want to, I think, draw from the internet's history as being decentralized and having these sort of ways that it can route around failure or damage, and think about what a more peer-to-peer form of the internet could be, and ways that what that would look like and how it could transform how we work. I, I think that there is a lot of power in thinking in networks and thinking in like federations and sort of other forms of collectives where it's not just one large organization or one large business. And I think co-ops definitely lend themselves to that.
It's really interesting to talk to a couple of young entrepreneurs who are have created a worker co-op where everybody is a member and everybody has an equal vote. So thank you for being here today. It's been a very interesting conversation. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to follow me on social media, and we'll see you next week for more Tech Talks.